And we are live casting.
Sorry, I had to drop off. Can everyone hear me? No, I can't hear anyone.
Right now, us internally.
Okay.
Backstage has been closed. There's no open dialogue going out to the open.
Okay.
You're 3 minutes out. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to another great event that we're going to have today with our executive roundtable. We'll be starting the event in just a couple of minutes as we allow others to enter into this venue, so please stay tuned. Welcome to have everyone here. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Roundtable event. I want to take a few minutes first in order to talk to you about our event and some of the disclosures that need to take place prior to actually this event taking place. So, for information purposes, this event will be for
Well, that's a perfect storm. Did we lose Jay? There you are, Jay. I think we lost you for a second there.
we did. We are having a few technical difficulties today, so let me get back in. Are we having a reverb also? That's the only other question I have to ask.
Nope, you sound fine. Oh, I'm going to have to make the assumption that maybe Jay is having a major technical issue. So I'll pick it up from here. Now, generally, when we do these events, we have a nice, decent script for us, so we kind of know what's going on. But thanks everyone for joining us. So I'm going to fly a little bit by the seat of my pants here and try to play the facilitator if Jay has issues reconnecting. So I'm George Usi. I'm CEO of Omnistruct, as well as one of the co-founders. Been in the industry for wow, I think going on nearly 27 years now. And would like to thank everyone for joining us today on this what we would refer to as a fantastic overview of data privacy and the hidden complexities surrounding that in cyber governance. Now, this is targeted at the modern C suite. So, if your role is CFO, CEO, anything with a C, the expectation is you're going to learn something about a number of things that may surprise you. A lot of this is what we might refer to as the business information security problem, not the chief information security officer problem or the CISO, as the industry calls it, but the BISO, the business information security officer problem, which tends to fall in the risk management side of business. And so when we talk about cyber governance, we talk about risk, and of course, the infamous word compliance. We are now living in an internet delivered world, and that means data. And the important thing to understand is you have cybersecurity and you have data privacy. You need to first understand the difference between the two. They're not the same. Privacy is about the rights of individuals, their information specifically, or the information of contracts between companies and supply chains. Those rights are not the same as cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is mostly about a technical challenge of protecting, detecting, and preparing for when hackers succeed, coupled with information security, which is also different depending on which part of the world you are in. You'll understand this. Protecting the information itself, different from cybersecurity. So we're not going to make it any more confusing for you than that. So now that I've got the primer going, I wanted an opportunity to introduce each of our guests. We have Ravi. So Ravi, if you want to take a moment to introduce yourself, that'd be great.
Yeah. Uh, Thanks, Josh. Thanks a lot, and thanks everyone for joining this executive panel. Um, Myself, my name Ravi Lingarkar. I'm Chief Product Officer at SISA. and I've been doing security for over 25 years, and all the way from building antivirus products to firewalls, VPN gateways, and two-factor authentication. At SISA, I managed three products: compliance delivery and data discovery and classification, which is used for privacy and related applications, and the extended detection and response. And I'm happy to be part of this panel to learn, share, and any insights I have, and also collaborate on this interesting space.
Hi, thank you, Ravi. I apologize to everyone. I'm back. Technical issues. The gremlins were at work today, and that's always part of a live cast. So I apologize. So, anyways,
So
George,
Robbie, hey,
great.
thanks. Sorry, Jay, I was already on the road there. Robbie, thanks for joining us. We're glad to have you, and welcome. So,
Thanks, Jeff.
from the perspective of where we're headed here, we also have a specialist in what I would identify as software as a service, or what you might have heard of previously as SaaS. And we have Anthony here. Anthony, you want to give yourself an introduction there?
Hey, thank you, George. Anthony Nitsos, founder and CEO of SaaS Gurus. We've been working with SaaS companies as fractional CFOs, controllers, money people, the entire back office, if you will, since I think 2007 was our first SaaS customer, and it was before people even knew what the term was. So I myself have been the CFO of multiple companies, as it were, and guiding others in that. I've participated in a couple of unicorn exits, one which was in the cybersecurity space, as a matter of fact. And that's what we're doing right now. So I like to joke that we let CEOs and founders sleep at night because we can give them the right numbers.
Fantastic. Thanks, Anthony, for the introduction, and thank you for being here. So with that, Jay's back in action. So we'll hand it over to Jay because he's the one with the agenda, and I've already done an intro myself. So go ahead, Jay, take it over.
I appreciate it. Thank you, everyone. Again, sorry about the technical confusion, but we'll plow right on here. So let's have a little fun and liveliness here for a few minutes before we tackle into the big questions here. We're looking at today at data governance and how everything works together. But before we jump into that big questions, I always like to ask a quick question to the panelists to kind of figure out who they are personally, is a little icebreaker. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Ravi. Each of you, I kind of came up with my own question for you. So I have a question for you, Ravi. If cyber governance were a theme song, what would it be and why?
Um, I love this thing, a British rock group, Muse. They have a hit song, Compliance, 2023 hit song Compliance. It's worth listening to it. I like it.
I would agree with you on that very much. It's one of my favorite artists. So thanks. I like that. Anthony, I'm going to take you down a different path. If data governance were a sport, which sport would it be and why?
It'd have to be a martial art.
Martial art. And how is that?
Well, I think martial art, when you're into it, it's, there's kind of a basic premise that you should be prepared for expect nothing and be prepared for anything. And that's how, the way I look at it right now, data security and cyber and all that, and data privacy is like, it embodies that in many ways.
Got it. George, got to ask you, if data governance were a superhero, what power would it have?
Oh, wow. That is I'm probably the worst person to ask that question, mainly because I'm not a very big follower of the Marvel or DC Comics realm. But and I'm probably going to get a lot of well, let's just say, come on, George, Batman. It's like Batman, right? Takes a lot of money, and nobody really has any true superhero powers. I am going to get flamed for that. I know. I apologize to all the
I
Batman
love it.
there.
I like it.
But I'm going to
It
go
is
with
perfect.
Batman because you have to be sharp, you have to have resources, you have to, be creative about how you're basically attacking crime. because sometimes that crime isn't the only thing you have to address. So you have to be prepared. Where's your Bat Cave? Where's your Batmobile?
Got it.
I could go
All right.
on, but I won't.
That's perfect. I love it. It's a perfect explanation. So now that we've had the pleasure of getting to know our panelists a little bit more outside of the focus topic, let's dive in though to data privacy and cyber governance. So I've put together some questions today to help guide the conversation. And the first question I'd like to put out to Ravi, and it really does fall into your area of expertise. How does AI and ML affect privacy in data governance? It's a big topic, and it's hard to get our hands and our minds wrapped around that.
Okay. I think it's a good question. I think both AI and ML requires a lot of data. They use data for training, data for prediction, data for making recommendations. So there's a lot of data that's being used. And much of the data could be sensitive data that's used, and training machine learning models. So that's where it affects when you're training. Depending on what the data is, this sensitive data can be de-anonymized when the machine learning model is already trained. There could be biases that can be perpetuated by the machine learning model. So these are the areas, both privacy and AI ML affects privacy.
Okay. Great. Anthony, George, expound on it.
Well, I think that there is definitely a tendency to look at data as something with a blinking light. And so if you don't understand tech, you do, this thing. I don't understand it. I'm going to throw it over the technical team and let them deal with it. So as I mentioned, privacy and cybersecurity are different. And now data is about the rights of individuals. So this is a business problem that requires business interest. So like any executive, especially the CEO, right? When your marketing department has a problem, right? You'll roll up your sleeves and you'll help them out. When your CFO or the financial teams have challenges, you're definitely in there rolling up your sleeves. So, but for some reason, it seems like there is just a new movement where CEOs who used to say, "Oh, that's why I hire the technical people. Here's the CIO buy." Right now, Luna legislation is requiring that they get involved with this challenge, and so we're talking about data. Now you have to understand, what is my stewardship responsibility, not just as the CEO, but the CFO and the investments the CFO is making becomes extremely important, because what's happening is this new legislation is cascading down accountability to the C-suite beyond just the CISO. In fact, a cyber incident just recently, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say recently, a cyber incident that's, let's just say, been in the ether. We're at 2 years in arrears. Both the chief information security officer and the chief financial officer received an SEC Wells civil notification. So now the CFO is being personally held accountable and the CISO is being personally held accountable for this incident. And so we think we're going to see more of those things. And the reason these things are happening is because new legislation is holding executives accountable. So now, even if you weren't interested as an executive to really dig and understand at least the basics of how you handle sensitive data, you absolutely have to keep sensitive data sacred as a mindset within your organization. So really, it's a mindset to me, right? So everyone in the organization has to have that mindset, and the only place that can come from is a directive from the board, who's also can be held accountable, as well as the CEO, who cascades that down into and that becomes the solid footprint for people doing the technical things as well as the non-technical things. So this is bigger than I think maybe you thought it was.
I want to chime in on this from the finance side of it. And, I'm a CEO too. So I've founded my own company. So it's, we deal with data security in terms of client data, right? In addition to our clients themselves are SaaS companies that are dealing with data. And I go back to that first principle. You got to be prepared for anything, expect nothing. And what it comes down to, that preparation is, as the CFO, is, to George's point, you need to understand where in your organization all of the what's called PII, professional, personally identifiable information, which means somebody's name, right? And it could be that basic. Somebody's name and an address, somebody's name, and it doesn't matter. It's somebody's name. And what's called PHI, which is personal health information, which is a special subset, but we're awash in medical information in this society. And a lot of the movement in AI in particular is in the health tech space right now. And so EMR, which is electronic medical record access. So suddenly the CFO himself or herself needs to become a CIO, because we need to understand where all of the data risks are so that we can understand what's the financial implication of that if there's a break. What can we do, to mitigate that, both procedurally as well as process-wise, as well as whatever it happens to be? And what's your backstop? In this case, a lot of cases, it's do you have the right insurance and do you have the right coverage of insurance? So I look at it from, you're right, the CFO. To me, it's the fact that the SEC is driving the accountability at the public company level. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen at the private company level, but in my mind, a good steward is one that does pay attention to this and says, I need to understand where all the data is in the organization because it could have a financial impact.
It's a great point. And I kind of want to pick up on that then, and on the question of how can we bridge those gaps between financial governance and technology governance to create a more holistic approach and between that and data management. I mean, it's big, it's encompassing. I'm kind of just putting that out to the group as a whole. There isn't any one particular person to throw this out to, because we all come from different perspectives seeing this, but I see that is it, the gaps between financial and technology. What are our thoughts on that?
I'll take from the technology side of things. It's first just to figure out where all your data is. Most companies don't know where it is. So that's where there are there are a whole bunch of tools you can use to discover all kinds of data within the organization. And there's a data, at endpoints, servers, in the cloud. It's all over the place. So it's good to use technology to figure that out first. Discover all your data, PHI or PII data. So from the technology side, there's a way to do it.
Anthony, your thoughts?
I think I'm all right. I'm going to quote Grandma: "Fish rots from the head." Right? Fish rots from the head. If the CEO is not a champion of the culture of data security and privacy, you're shoveling sand against the tide. That to me, that's the fundamental, is you've got to get the CEO themselves to understand that this is important and that resources need to be devoted to it, and not stick your head in the sand when a threat comes along, like the recent threats in terms of the way that systems are being compromised now are through the SaaS applications that employees are using are not themselves secure. So there's this whole identity security thing that's going on right now, right? And that's the new focus. But it all comes down to, like I said, the same thing: is it's got to come from the top, and it has to be clear. It can't just be hey, we're going to be more data secure. Okay, what's your SOC 2 plan? What's your GDPR plan? Are you compliant with CFR 11? All that alphabet stuff out there, right? Are you, as to Ravi's point, do you know where your data is? It's 10 o'clock at night. Do you know where your data is? That's a very fundamental question that keeps me up at night, is especially with, like I said, a lot of the new SaaS companies that are VC backed are coming in with AI, which means they're dealing with massive amounts of records in ways that haven't been dealt with before. Patterns can be put together. As Ravi said, you can de-anonymize the data and get it back to the original person's name with AI. Okay, how do you protect against something like that? Those are the fundamentals to me. It's the culture has got to start from the top.
Yeah, I think the important thing to understand, and to further to further the point that Anthony has made, right? As much as we like to think that every single CEO out there is going to say, "Yes, I'm in," we all know that some won't. And that's unfortunate. They will have to learn the hard lesson. But what is an organization that feels like they might, the producers, the people in the trenches, as well as the leaders who are looking at the CEO saying, hey, you need to do this. And, frankly speaking, sometimes you also have budget issues as the CFO. And I think we're all very well aware of the market conditions expected in 2024. So as a CFO, how the heck am I going to keep my budgets in check while this security thing continues to spiral out of control in my books? Well, guess what, folks? There is some good news. A lot of this legislation wants proof that you did the right thing, especially when nobody's watching, even in spite of executives that are still trying to understand this problem or CFOs struggling with the budget. Justification for why you made those decisions documented is what makes sense. And as a speaker for CalBar to attorneys in the state of California, so I teach the topic of cybersecurity to attorneys, and I could share a lot of information about what the American Bar Association thinks in terms of how the attorneys are dealing with their own security, but that could be a completely separate webinar. What I want to make clear to you is that the reality is that a lot of attorneys will tell me, listen, you have to do what's reasonable, but you can't just say you did it. You have to stay on top of it. You have to be involved. You have to be actively involved in meetings, even if it feels like it's painful and you're not understanding the technical jargon. Because let's face it, us technical people, we like to go, as I like to say, all flux capacitor on all of you, right? Which frustrates anyone in the C-suite that doesn't talk the jargon. And shame on us for getting too geeky at times. It's our nature. Many are that nature. But if you can prove you're doing the right thing, right, continuously prove that, document it, show your progress. So let's say you are in the trenches and you're a manager, you're a CIO, and the CEO isn't getting it. Maybe the CFO is holding back on the budget, right? You can use cyber insurance as a method of, listen, we've got to get the cyber insurance. Look, there's new exclusivities and exclusions and subjectivities in our policy. We're supposed to be doing this thing to prove that we're doing the right thing, because that's what's happening. They call them information security programs, data mappings, data protection. Like, how are you protecting the data? Documenting how you're planning on doing that, even in spite of budgets being tight or other executives not being on board. I'm looking at you, marketing, right? Where you're soliciting information and you may be breaking global, international omnibus data privacy laws. You do have to do your best to make sure that you're staying on top of it and documenting it, right? And so, and for those of you that are like, well, what about when a hacker attacks? It seems like it can be. Guess what, folks? Every single digital forensics and incident response expert certified that walks in the door during an incident. So let's say you do get hacked, even if you're doing everything right. They're going to ask for two things. And if you don't have them, they're going to say, sorry, I can't confirm whether you have or have not lost data. I want an updated network map so I know where everything's connected. And I want a data map with the flows of where all the data is going. If you don't have those, it's game over. It's going to be ugly for you. You're going to have some challenges and let the lawsuits fly. So if you're a CFO, right, and you can't get a data map out of your team, especially as Ravi had indicated, there's two different kinds of data: structured data and unstructured data. Right? And I'm not talking about just data in your environment, throwing it into the cloud and hoping that it works. Is also a challenge. You do have to also map your connections to your cloud providers as well, because we did have an educational entity that actually used software for all of the students, and the cloud provider of that software had an error in their code that released student data to thousands of parents that shouldn't have had it. So those mistakes happen with software providers, and all of a sudden you have a privacy issue and a notification issue, and all these things start happening. So it's not just hackers, right? There's all kinds of ways that thing can go sideways. But you have to be prepared to understand where that data is.
So, speaking of data, I'm going to put this out to Ravi on this part of the question I'm going to have. We talk about data, cloud in different places. So, what about Ravi? What are the techniques for uncovering latent data assets within an organization, both structured, unstructured, and all the gigabytes and terabytes and petabytes of data that they have hiding in places? How do you go about doing that? I mean, we talk about the other side of the equation, getting ready for it, but how do you go about finding it? How do you go about uncovering this latent data?
So there are a couple of tools out there. One is data discovery. You can actually scan your networks and discover both your structured and unstructured data. That's one. And there are also data cataloging tools out there that actually catalog all your data. So there are a bunch of tools, and SISA actually has one of those tools out there. And we have lots of banking customers using them. So
Can I tell you a trick?
sure.
So here's how we identify all of the SaaS providers in an organization. It's called the budget. And in the budget, we have a specific tab called Tech Stack. And everything that we pay for, because in the end, it all shows up in finance, right? So everything that goes to the accounting system, we're looking at it and saying, who's LinkedIn? Who's using Jira? Who's using, whatever it happens to be. And then we work with the IT team to say, here's what we're paying for. Do you have security protocols around, user login protocols around you? Do you know that this software is being used in the organization? Because these are how back doors are left open. Is somebody goes out there and subscribes to some piece of software that the rest of the organization that's responsible for security doesn't know about. That's how right now what I'm seeing is a real trend. So we get ahead of that by saying, hey, we've got our hands completely on where all the money's going. This is what we're spending it on. Do you have this accounted for in your, your SOC 2 or your data network plan or whatever it is that you're relying on, for your security, privacy, process?
And I'm gonna add to that because there is one gap in that strategy, and that is freeware. So I'm going to look back at you, marketing department, you HubSpot users, you that are using the free version that doesn't show up on the budget. You,
So,
as a CFO, need to understand there's a term your IT department uses called shadow IT, and what that means is other departments pulling in SaaS tools that you didn't even know were being used. So, and I do hate to beat up on the marketing department, so let's shift over to a different department, right? And that is a department that is very common in most organizations, which is your operations. So maybe you have an ERP, right? And if you're not a large scale organization, you're probably a little bit less mature and have varying systems and varying vendors that you work with. Now those are going to show up in the budget. However, the challenge that you're still going to have is your own personnel operationally solving a problem. Hey, I'm just going to go create an Airtable account, which is a kind of like a little database tool, and it's free, right? Oh, free sounds wonderful. And this is where it gets really ugly, because where you lose visibility is in your subcontractor base. So they're in the budget, but what tools are they using? So how do you address that problem? So you've got the shadow IT problem of your own company, which can be addressed with policies. You basically threaten action against employees who do it and those sorts of things on paper. And there's different ways to detect that. I know there's a few of our clients that do an excellent job. They've found some technical tools that can help them do that. But the financial is absolutely the first place to look. That's where you're going to find it first as a CFO. But what about your subs or your independent contractors or any vendor you're working with? There is a concept called third-party risk management, and it's part of governance. And that's what governance is. It's governance of data security, it's governance of your supply chain and the third parties you work with, it's governance of your customer data, governance of risk. What cyber insurances do you have? Do you have the right cyber insurances? These are all part of governance, and that is a big part of what a lot of our customers have us help them with. It can be very complicated, especially for organizations that have complexities and heavy regulations. So these kinds of demonstrable proving grounds, if you want to call them, become critical. So really, when you get into any kind of discussion about data privacy, it opens this can of worms that will give any CFO a headache and can make a CEO really take notice and go, oh my gosh, this is bigger than just throwing this over the fence, because it's got a blinking light over to the IT teams or the security teams. And keep me protected, keep those hackers out. Bad news, they're going to get in. They're going to get in some way, right? And CFOs who proactively prepare for cyber risk and governance and compliance actually spend, by study, there's an entity called ISACA, which is a kind of a security governing body entity. I will mention it, kind of a training body. CFOs who prepare in advance actually spend 58% less than their counterparts who just react to when the IT teams come to them. So get ahead of it. Your security team or IT teams and all those workers will be very thankful that you're budgeting those things, because it will save you in the long run. So this becomes an aggregate issue of just not where's my data and how do I find it and how do I discover it. But if I've got an IT environment that perhaps can be improved under the principle of security and regulatory compliance, right? By planning, you can put together a roadmap. So you don't need to do everything at once. You can, understand where your risks are, and stretch it out over the course of multiple years if you have to. But so this is not a project; it is a process you will go through in perpetuity, like with any regulation. And we don't see any of these data privacy regulations getting any softer anytime soon. So, from the perspective of what's in your cloud, what's your budget, where's my data, these tend to be kind of resonating issues with CFOs out there. And I would say be very careful of getting stuck in the mindset that, hey, I think we're good technically. We're good. We got this. Nobody's going to get in. We've locked it down. That it's a trick, right? That mindset will get you in trouble, because now you're no longer demonstrating and proving that you're continually taking care of the data that you've been responsible stewarding. Especially if you are investing in cloud, you have to do third-party risk management for those vendors, because if they have an issue, it's going to cascade straight down to you, especially those that are in executive roles. So make sure that you have a good approach, and the great news is there are good answers for that. So I'll stop talking now. Jay, did you have another question for us?
I did, which actually brings me to, this is a collective question due to your collective backgrounds. All of you have been founders at companies. You've led at organizations. You've dealt at many levels at organizations. And so my question is to the group. This is an open question because I think it's important to get the perspective, because you bring it from different parts of the industry. What role does the board of directors play in cyber governance, and how can they be better educated on the importance of data privacy and their exposure personally? I think that's a big topic that many boards and C-suite don't understand today, with the shifting regulatory environment as well as with the governance environment that's taking place. Exposure is very high, and I think 2024 is going to be even crazier. So I'm kind of opening it up because Anthony and Ravi, you both have been founders and startups, and Anthony, you've done some unicorns here that you're exiting out of. So
I'll just
go ahead, Ravi.
so at the board at the board level, typically you form a security committee, You have a committee with a couple of board members and some external folks, and including the management team. Part of it, part of the security community, and the committee updates the board on various aspects of security, compliance issues, and regulatory updates, and including uh, anything new coming up. That's how I've seen at the board level happening. Any, Judge?
I think so. First, I'm sure all of you executives do understand, and this is also for the technical teams as well. So every board, you have to have three key components. So every person on the board, three things are expected from each member. We call it the three T's: their time, their talent, and their treasure. That's it. Congratulations, you're a board member if you can bring those three things to an organization. Now, those aren't always the treasure is clearly, follow the money, right? So generally, if you have a board member who can help the organization get funding or can introduce you to large new prospects, that's a treasure component. And what has to happen now with these board members, and which should be iterated by the executive teams, is that you are our talent and you are our treasure. Let's use our investment into cyber risk management as an asset and connect us with other companies that are like-minded in terms of their approach to securing the data that they are responsible for stewarding. And it doesn't take a genius to do a little bit of checking online to see some of the organizations that might be experiencing a little bit of criticism, especially in big tech. But take that with a grain of salt, because I think, if for those of you moving to cloud, right, it feels safer. And it's true, they have probably hundreds more security professionals than you'll ever have, right? And so there's a lower risk potentially of having a regulatory issue. But I also have to remind you that it's not always the cloud provider that's responsible for gaining access to that cloud. So the users and how they log in, and there have been many incidents that a board is going to not really know about until the incident happens. And so not surprising your board becomes important. And the board should also not be surprised by what we call cascading legislation. And I think often what a board does is what regulatory issues impact us directly. They don't think about indirect. So for example, there's something in the EU, the European Union, called the NIS2 directive, right? It went into effect January of this year. And I know all of you CFOs out there know what GDPR is at this point. If you haven't heard about it, what planet are you living on? It is European data privacy protection. It's been in the news, and it is about protecting what essentially is the privacy rights of the individuals in Europe. The reason that's important is because if you don't do that correctly, the fines are a minimum of millions of dollars, or I believe 2 to 4% of your global revenue if you don't comply. So believe me, everyone doing business in Europe was aware of that. The NIS directive shifts that focus and those same levels of fines to cybersecurity and the data protection component. So if you can't prove that you've been diligent in that capacity and somebody in your customer base is doing business internationally, you could have a big problem on your hands as the cascading compliance crashes into your business and it impacts your revenue. Because if you're not addressing that, you're not getting that next contract. So watch your contracts. And that's what you tell your board. Watch your contract. We're watching our contracts. This is important to us, third party risk management. We need to be doing this. We need to be thinking about this. There's all this legislation coming. And what cloud we go into, not only does it matter, but there's legislation now that is global that could kind of sneak in and bite us. So don't miss that additional step into third parties at the board level. And don't miss, of course, time. Your board is there to give you time. Ask them difficult questions. Do you need some difficult questions to ask them? Reach out to us. We have them.
Anthony, you
I'm
want to jump in?
I'm thinking on what George said, and I think a perspective in terms of what size company is the board we're talking about. Um, I think that's a relevant factor. So I work a lot of smaller companies, startups, where the number of employees can be counted on one hand all the way to a couple of hands, right? So those boards of directors are concerned about two things: cash runway and sales growth. Right? These are tech startups; they're SaaS companies. Cybersecurity and data privacy, insofar as they are related to the product, might come up in a product roadmap discussion, but then they're leaning on the VP of engineering or basically the head of the development team to be the one to identify, as they're basically coding this, whether or not they're accessing PHI or PII and what they're doing with it. And then again, same question: what software are they bringing in the production environment? Not just the hosting, of course, that's the easy part, but all the stuff around the hosting that you're running to support the security and the data privacy and the authentication of the production environment itself. Suddenly becomes a lot more complex, and those discussions just take up a lot of time. So the boards don't tend to be that focused on it. It's more along the lines of, we direct you as the CEO to make sure that you're taking care of this. And then the CEO says to the VP of engineering, I want to make sure you're taking care of this. So it, unfortunately, I think, is too often that case, but it's also a practical issue. I mean, the board is there for X number of hours once a quarter because they have other companies in their portfolio they need to be talking to.
I think there's one audience that we may have neglected a little bit. I want to talk to that audience now for those of you that may be working for a small business. This may sound like, this is for the big companies, right? So what is a small company supposed to do? How do we deal with these challenges, right? So that same question in the light of the CEO and the owner, who's also the COO, the CFO, you know who I'm talking about, right? Those dual role executives where they may have a couple of executives, but they have gaps because they're covering two or three of the roles, including the visionary and CEO role. Right? It's tough. I agree. Fortunately, right, there are answers. The government has somewhat come to the rescue with what's called the NIST cybersecurity framework, but that alone won't do it. You need to be working with a strong IT managed service provider that has a good understanding of these issues. So make sure you seek IT service companies who have gone through some kind of NIST CSF framework and that they're going to be able to help you with the same. And if you're really small and you're doing what we call break fix, which means I can't afford to pay an IT service provider, so I'm just going to pay somebody when things break. You're the ones that are probably going to suffer the most if you have an incident. So there are some free resources out there for the micro businesses that perhaps an IT service provider or managed service provider might not take on. One is called securethevillage.org out of Los Angeles. It's an initiative to bring resources to smaller businesses as well as IT service providers too. And then there's larger entities that you can go obviously to the government site, the NIST, which is the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST. So we can't forget about the small businesses because they comprise what essentially of the almost 4 million businesses in the U.S. or encroaching on 4 million businesses. It's 3.2 million of them. So if we're going to make a difference, we have to address them too. So there's an answer for you as well. So don't fear, right? This legislation can cascade down to you through your pocketbook by a company saying, I can't do business with you because you're too small and you haven't done A, B, C, and D, or you don't have the right cyber insurances. And so those things are going to become very real for businesses, especially if your business is interacting with consumers. And I know some 5-6 person businesses that have 200,000-300,000 records, sensitive data records, which today is just your full name and your personal email address collected digitally. That's it. That's all you need for the California to consider it a privacy record. It's not credit cards and social security numbers anymore, just that. It's gotten looser. So your vendors and your and obviously PCI is an example of that. For those of you that are taking credit cards, you might know what that is. So, which is why we have Ravi on the line, and he has a lot of experience there. So there's got to be an answer for everyone, and so do not fear if you feel like you're not the right fit. We're here to help in arrears as well. So sorry, I felt like it had to be said, and I wanted to make sure it wasn't missed.
Appreciate it, George. We're coming up at 9 minutes to the hour. I want to leave some time in order to get some Q&A in. So right now, I'm opening it up for the group to be able to send questions in. I actually have a couple questions here, which I want to put out to our panelists. And the first question I have is, how can executives quantify robust data governance frameworks and the return on the investment? George, Anthony, Ravi, which one of you would like to take that?
Well, the good news is that this is what some of these frameworks do. So if you adopt the NIST framework or you adopt an international standard like ISO, even for those of you that are looking at something called SOC 2, and if all that sounds foreign to you, these are just the these are not technical terms. These are 3-letter acronyms for governance and regulations, right? So you're probably gonna have to learn those as a CFO anyway. So this may be old news for some. There are risk management metrics that you can use for that. A lot of people think it has to be this flux capacitor technical doohickey that has to spit out some number to me. And often that is not the case in risk management. So for the risk management professionals that are out there, that if you happen to be on this in part of our audience, are probably thinking to themselves, yeah, that's what risk management professionals are for, right? That's why we're here, is because we will measurably provide risk analysis for you. And generally, the answer is the term that we call GRC, or governance, risk, and compliance. And that's actually what Omnistruct does as a service, because generally you need kind of an army of people to pull that off for a mid-sized business and a few people for smaller businesses. And it's too expensive to do it on your own. And so ultimately, that's your proof, right? That's where you're looking at risk, you're asking risk-based questions, and then you're delivering a measurable metric, not just on the footprint of the tech and how well that's being done, but on the risk decisions that you're making. And that is how you deal with it quantifiably. You have quantifiable metrics and analysis and risk management, right? And that holds weight in a negotiation or an argument, or if you're in an unfortunate situation where you have a matter because of a cyber incident. And I'm not a privacy, I've worked with a lot of them, but I will quote some of them who say, have a love affair with documentation. The more you have, the better on what it is you did, why you did it, and justifying the risk that you accepted. Write it down, right? And this can be a bit of a challenge. I know a lot of us technical people, a lot of us got into college and we're like, this tech stuff is cool, but I can't pass that damn English class. I don't want to write. I don't do any of those things, right? So that's a bit of an inside joke if you're a technical person. And we're not necessarily the best writers. Maybe that's why ChatGPT came to existence, right? So, but ultimately, you have to keep in mind that you have to document these things. And that's the answer, is an attorney will tell you documentation, documentation, documentation. Where did you decide you weren't going to do something, Mr. CFO or Mrs. CFO? And you knew you were accepting the risk. Well, why did you do that? Well, I just didn't have the money, right? There's a recession coming. I had to do it. That's a lot better than, oh, I don't know. Right? Oh, I think what I did. No, write it down.
Got it. Perfect. I have another question that came in, and I believe this is a good one for you, Ravi. Does data differ across industries, and what unique challenges do they pose for financial and technology officers?
So yeah, so depending on the industry, like financial, fintech, there's lots of financial, credit card information, and so how you handle that, and the industry specific regulations are different. In some of those industries, you have to comply to both the industry specific regulation like PCI DSS and data privacy, because you're having customer data. So there may be multiple compliances you have to comply to. So that's the key, I think. Maybe George or Anthony can add more to it.
I think for us at the CFO level, when we're dealing with companies like this, there's kind of two controls. that we can take a look at: the preventive controls and then what I call the corrective controls. The preventive controls are investing in things like SOC 2. SOC 2 has it's a very good framework in terms of causing exactly what George said. Does every order have some terms and conditions that's governing it? Are you doing regular background checks on your employees? It's really quite broad in terms of where it goes with creating that framework that you can then document. It can seem like it costs a lot, but it's kind of like, well, you want to pay to prevent things from happening, then you invest in it. And then there's the other side of it. I call it the corrective, and that's what George has been alluding to, is the cyber insurance. A lot of that is driven by contracts with the customers. I'll just say that from a practical experience, is like a large customer, especially if they're a healthcare organization or could be a state-run organization, is going to have high cybersecurity insurance limit requirement in order to do business with them. To George's point earlier, sorry, you're too small to do business with us. If you can't afford $10,000 to $30,000 a year for good cyber insurance at a high, coverage rate, then we can't do business with you. So those are the two things from a control perspective that I, as a CFO, am looking for, which is, do you have some, as you said, documented framework? It's easy. SOC 2, it's fairly standard. It's also pretty good. And it's good at getting your mindset around, oh, we need to document stuff. Oh, we really need to follow processes here.
Yeah, and where you do business matters as well. So we've got clients who are global, and SOC 2 is important if you're a cloud provider, but the world wants ISO outside of the US generally. So it's the International Standards Organization, right? And so we have clients that are adopting ISO because they're doing business in Europe, and they're dealing with this NIS2 directive I mentioned earlier. And so now they have to, worry about the same thing they worried about with GDPR. Now it's in the cybersecurity footprint. So they're rushing to get their proof in place. So it's about proof, really. So can you demonstrate you were doing the right thing, especially when nobody's watching? And that really is your challenge. And the technical is definitely part of it, but this is, how did you say that, Anthony? The fish rots from the head down. Did I get that?
Fish rots from the head.
Yeah. So you do have to make sure that the board and the CEO, that they are all educated on this topic, which is one of the reasons we're here in this session, is hopefully we're providing some education and ammunition for your board. And I would argue that a lot of well-established boards of larger public companies, they already know, right? I mean, it's already happening. So private equity groups, yeah, absolutely. If you're considering an exit, we have a CEO on this session, you better be prepared, because that's a private equity group is not going to be interested in helping you with that exit. If you're not dealing with the regulatory overheads in your industry, especially in cyber, if you've had incidents and those sorts of things. So these are all risk areas. It all boils down to risk management. So internationally versus US, I think it would be safe to say that since we're here in the US, we're probably talking to a lot of companies that are doing business here in the US. And look for those SaaS providers that have SOC 2. You can pursue your own SOC 2 certification as a business as well. But generally speaking, what a lot of contracts have in them is the NIST CSF. So can you demonstrate you're a metric to NIST CSF? And so that's another thing that becomes important. And as you become international, where you're both US and international, you're going to stack these different 3, 4, 5-letter acronym regulations, or we call it frameworks, on top of each other. So you're going to have ISO and maybe SOC 2 and even a NIST CSF foundation. So why is that? For CFO's perspective, I think we can all agree that we have a very active legal community in this country. We love to argue in the US. We love it. In fact, most of the legislation uses the word reasonable in cyber. How do you explain reasonable to a technical person? You can't. Where's the line, baby? Right? So a lot of the NIST CSF, it's guideline oriented. It's what's reasonable. It feels squishy, and it makes technical people very nervous. So you have the opportunity with the NIST CSF built by our government. Consider this situation and how it works in the US. You're in a pickle. you've had some kind of an issue. I don't want to call it an incident or fraud, and all of a sudden people are talking about, well, might have to pursue you legally. Well, listen, I follow the NISCSF. Right? Hey, judge. Hey, attorney on the other side. Here's me demonstrating I did the right thing, especially when nobody's watching. I followed all these regulations. I followed what the government asked me to do. If you don't like it, go vote and change the law. That's generally how this country works, right? Overseas, it's a little bit different. ISO has a risk management function, right? It has a governance function. It has a privacy function. It has a cybersecurity function separate from an information security function, and all these guidelines and documents you can certify against all these things. It's more prescriptive. Is it more effective? Well, the jury's out on that one. I think people have different opinions of what's good and what's not. But ultimately, as a CFO, where you're doing business, if I'm outside of the US, customers that are outside of the US, I should be aware of what ISO is and get NIST now. If I'm in the US and I'm dealing with more than 50,000 sensitive records, I need to be doing this CSF right now. Because a lot of the privacy laws, the trigger is if you're dealing with 50,000 records. So, and to you service providers out there, if you're doing services or you're raising funds, if you have more than 50,000 records, you might have a ticking time bomb on your hands for some of these omnibus data privacy laws as well. So that's why this becomes complicated. There's a reason why this is called complicated. You need people who do this full time. You really do, who understand these regulations, and people who understand data discovery, people who understand finance, right? So we felt like we put the right panel together here because we have all three of those attributes here. An organization that does governance, an organization that specializes in identifying budgets and finance, and an organization that does data discovery, data protection, right? So this is part of the answer. There's still more, though. Jay, sorry about the long-winded response.
Yeah, that's great. I appreciate it. I will say that we are at the end of our event. I want to thank everyone today for being part of it. Ravi, thank you very much for coming today. Anthony, thank you for your time. Appreciate it. I believe our guests got a lot of insights and value out of this. George, thank you very much for your time. I know that you all are extremely busy running businesses and helping clients. And from this, I want to say to everyone attending today that you will be getting a copy of this to be sent out, so you have it available. If you have any questions or would like to set up additional conversations with either Ravi, Anthony, or George, or all of them, you can put it in the chat panel below, and I will get that information out to them so we can coordinate and have you continue the conversation. Again, thank you everyone for attending today. Thank you to our panelists, and everyone have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. Thanks, Ravi and Anthony.
Thank you. Thanks, Josh.